blood flight. I know JP because my wife Christabel and he are two formidable Westminster councillors, and as a result of which we became very good friends. And thank everybody for coming this evening. It's been very nice to see several old friends going back many, many years. What we have is a very unusual beast. It's someone from continental Europe whose native tongue is French.
Dutch.
Wow, come on, don't smile at him. Flemish, well, that's, yeah, all right. But who actually voluntarily realized that the Anglo-Saxon principles of economics and liberty had a great deal to offer and were rather pleasanter for citizens to live under than some of the regimes across the water. And you remind me so much, when I was learning medieval history, there was this amazing old German professor, Herr Walter Ullmann, who had fled Germany, and he'd been a dustman in Cambridge and eventually became professor of medieval history. And he used to say, there's a great difference. The continental Europe has a descending concept of power. Power comes down from heaven, and you do what you want with it. The Anglo-Saxon economies has a concept of the ascending concept of power. Power is derived from the people. And you have a cultural major difference there, which is still alive today.
Thank you very much, Howard. Howard has become a very good friend, and so has Christabel. Their house, not so far away from here, is almost like a political salon, where you meet lots and lots of like-minded politicians. It's like a breath of fresh air when you enter, because you know that the people who you will bump into will probably have the similar political views. Well, David Willits, our Minister of State for Universities and Science, they always call him Two Brains Willits. Well, if David Willits is Two Brains Willits, then Howard should be a Three Brains Flight.
Wearing out.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for coming. In fact, this is an excellent gathering, because you are all my friends. There are, in fact, very few politicos here tonight, because there are 3 competing events, and there are votes in the House of Commons, and there is a big event at the think tank. And so the people who are here are my friends. We probably largely agree politically, though not completely, and some of you do emphatically not, in fact. We have people here who are in fact socialists or supporters of the Labour Party. And that's exactly how I want it. In my ward, or in politics in general, I make a great difference between the political ideology and the social friends I make. I distinguish very strictly. Some of my best friends are Labour councillors in Westminster Council. And equally in my ward, some of my supporters and friends are in fact Labour. Life is too short. We should not mix politics with friendship. I myself have always been warmly welcomed in this country, and that's what is actually the most striking. Having lived here for now 17 years, I have never been made unwelcome. I have been welcomed with open arms in by all sorts of people, all sorts of places. When I stood for elections, and there were usually, at local elections, 3 people from my party on the ballot for a specific ward. And the other 2 had very English names, and I, of course, a very foreign name, which looks French, even worse. In fact, voting-wise, it never made any difference. All 3 of us usually got about the same number of votes.
Way higher up the alphabet, that's a great advantage.
That is usually the only thing which makes the difference. It makes a difference of 20 or 30, 40 votes, where you are in the alphabet. But that's it. In the secrecy of the polling booth, people do not discriminate. And that is very striking. Now, how did this book come about? It has a lot to do with my very good friend Rupert Matthews, who's just here, who is the publisher. Now, Rupert stood with me in the European elections in 2009 for the East Midlands, and was very much in the same position as I was here in London. He was the runner-up. If we had won an extra seat in the East Midlands, Rupert would have become an MEP, and so would I have done here in London. That was the system. It's a list system. The voter cannot actually indicate who he really wants. He has to follow the list. But the great news is that a few days ago, Roger Helmer, MEP, has announced that he's retiring, and from the 1st of January, Rupert is going to be an MEP. And not just an MEP, but a very sound one. And everybody who knows me knows what that means. Rupert, in June this year, Rupert asked me, JP, are you interested in writing a book, or a manifesto, or a brochure, or something like that? And I said, yeah, I'd like to do a book. Come up with a proposal. And the next day I sent in my proposal, because this was something which had been in the back of my mind for a long time. And so I wrote it in 5 weeks, July, August, a lot of it in the office. There's nobody from the office here, thankfully. And then revised it for about 7 weeks. So in 3 months it was all done and dusted. It needed to be ready for the Conservative Party conference, for the launch there. The problem with a book is that it's never finished. You never know when you write a book, you never know when it's done. And you really have to give yourself a strict deadline, because you can't keep revising and keep adding things. And so as soon as I had sent it to Rupert, I realized, oh, I forgot that, and I should have put that in, and maybe I should have changed that, but of course it needs to end at some point. And so what's in it is up to today. It's basically, when I arrived in 1994, up to now, all the things I saw and encountered, and lots of anecdotes right up to today, and the most recent bits I've chosen what is politically relevant. And so if I had waited for another 2 months, I would probably have put my Liam Fox anecdote in it as well. So that's lucky. It is a mixture of autobiography, travel writing, and political history. Travel writing in that it's very much observing, as an outsider coming into the UK, observing what goes on here and how people behave. And I noticed myself that while I was writing the book, the first chapters in the beginning, 1994, 1995, 96, I was very much writing in the sense of they, the English, and they do this, and I saw that. And then I noticed that unconsciously, when I went when I wrote more chapters, I started to write we. And that's very much how it's now. I feel like this is we. And I became a British citizen, but that's not when it actually happened. The longer you are in a country, the more you identify with it. And the more strange your original country becomes. I go back to Belgium, and every time I go back, it becomes stranger and stranger. It's full of little anecdotes, and that's exactly how I want it. There is a clear political undertone. But think about it. What I believe in, individual liberty and freedom, is all about billions of people all over the world going about their business, running their lives as they see fit, trying to improve their situation as they think best, as opposed to a centralized system which tells you what to do, and which tells the billions of people, you should live like that, and you should change that, and we have decided you should not do that. And so hence, there is a psychological undertone to this book. It's the little anecdotes, they are important, because individuals count, individuals are important. Now, I've kept it pleasant and light, I hope. It is not ideological. There is an undertone, but it's not about ideology, and you will not be bored witless, hopelessly, hopefully. Although there are 3 chapters on the economic crisis where I couldn't help myself, and I did actually try to explain it, how the state and government created this crisis, And that is pretty dry stuff. And so if you don't want to read ideology, just skip those skips and just, flick through it and go through it. But I thought it absolutely necessary to tell that story. I myself, I believe I'm what they call classical liberal. That's to say, not a Lib Dem, but a liberal in the 19th century sense, very much in favor of the free market economy, but also in favor of individual freedom. But I'm not some people call that libertarianism, but that has obtained a bad connotation because people think it means anarchy. I'm not an anarchist.
Right.
Or a free marketeer. I call myself occasionally a free marketeer. But so if I am a libertarian, I'm not a complete libertarian. I don't go all the way. There are things where I don't think we should go all the way. And so my colleagues in the office will berate me on that and say, oh, you're wishy-washy. I don't think I'm wishy-washy. But the problem is, when as a politician you have clear beliefs, it is always divisive. And so I find it very interesting when people attack Thatcher. They say, she was very divisive. And then in the same sentence they say, that politician is very boring and he never says anything. Well, it's the one or the other. Either you have beliefs or you don't. If you have beliefs, you are going to have very strong supporters, people who will stand on their chairs to clap for what you say. And there will be people who hate you and who think you are, evil incarnate. I mean, and so if you have beliefs, you are divisive, sadly. But it's Margaret Thatcher who used to say, well, if you stand in the middle of the road, you get hit by traffic from both sides. Now, you will not agree with everything that's in the book, precisely because of that. It would be a very sad world where we agreed on every single issue. So I just suggest you read over the things you don't like. Now, what is not in it? I don't write on foreign affairs. I don't write about the war in Iraq, although I have thrown views on that, which may differ actually from my usual friends. I don't write about foreign travel. That's not what it's about. It's about Britain. And the only exception I make is that I write about the 2 years I lived in New York between 2000 and 2002, which was a fascinating time because it was the first time George W. Bush was elected, and I was part of that campaign. And secondly, 9/11. And then we saw how America changed. So that is in there. What else is not in there? The juiciest stories, of course, you can't tell because I cannot afford an army of libel lawyers. And so things which people have told you and you can't actually prove it, but it is true, you can't actually say, sadly. Many of the people in the book, most of the people in the book are friends. And there are many friends about whom I would have liked to write because they're very eccentric. But I thought that was a bad idea. It's bad form. They are my friends. I've changed the names on a few occasions. There are 2 or 3 people where I have changed the names. For political reasons, I had to be careful what I said. Occasionally, when I talk about Westminster Council, I'm still a Westminster Councillor, and so that is tricky. Because as soon as you say things where you perhaps disagreed with your colleagues, that will be used by the other side to attack you. And so I've been careful not to do that. I don't talk much about Cameron, about his big society project. And I will not further explain that. And so, some people are conspicuous by their absence. Now, as far as I'm aware, there are no lies in the book. As far as I'm aware. Not everything is mentioned, as I said, only the things which I thought were relevant.